All right. Hey, guys. Welcome to Leadership Academy. I am super excited for today. First off, I want to acknowledge you guys for being here. And I do want to give a special thanks to Kayla for getting everything coordinated and kicked off together. Many of you guys already know this, but in the month of January, we had a contest to win a trip to Jamaica. And we had Kevin and Landon and Nick from our office all win it. And there were over a dozen people from around the DC metro area. And I don't even know how many people total won from the region. What I do know is that this is literally the largest number of people ever that have won the region trip. We literally completely booked our hotel. It is over capacity, and we had to rent out rooms in a second sister hotel just to accommodate the Vector group. So that is really exciting and really encouraging. Obviously, if you're attending us here live, then you didn't make it on this trip. But that is the reason that we're working so hard on the Facebook Jumpstart program right now, because there's going to be another trip in the summer, and personal recruiting and team building is going to be a major component of that. And you'll be able to win our next trip just by executing the Facebook Jumpstart program. And our goal for the next one is that we book 2 hotels fully. So not one and then a couple extra rooms, but 2 full hotels, and we take over whatever country or location we're going on for the next time. So really, really excited for what we're putting together here. A couple quick things to get us kicked off for today. Number one, if you haven't already, make sure that you update the website. It's fbjumpstart.org, and you're going to click on the button Submit Activity, and that's where you're going to put in the number of friends that you've added so far. Kayla, if that's already been done, then kudos to you. If it's not been done yet, then please feel free to pause this video until everyone's gotten it done. Okay, second thing, Kayla's going to be running a workshop. So by the way, as I'm recording this, it is Friday night. It's 9 p.m. My flight leaves at 7 a.m. tomorrow, but I wanted to make sure that I got this done in plenty of time to make sure I was well prepared and equipped for you guys. So Kayla and I spent the entire day together today, literally from 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock a.m., depending on what clock you're looking at or whose clock you're looking at, but all the way up until almost 7 p.m., just shopping for offices, touring around. By the way, went up to Delaware, so we were looking for Kayla and for Becky, looking at a bunch of places. I think we got one of them that's going to be locked up after today's effort, and that'll continue when I get home. But either way, so we spent the entire day together driving around, looking at offices, and she brought this up, and I really liked the idea. She said, last year we had an accountability group. There was a couple of us that got in a call every week, and we shared what was working, what we were having challenges with, how many friends we were adding, what specific ideas we had. And she said, I'd really like to do that again. And I confess, I'll say this on her behalf, so don't hold this against Kayla. But she said, I was looking at the numbers last week of how many friends people have added, and it looks like either they're just not doing it yet because they're nervous to get started, or that they're doing it, but they're not taking enough action to really make a move on the targets. And by the way, I don't know what the numbers are now because it's Friday night and you're not going to share this until Tuesday. So hopefully we're in a very different place. But that was what she was telling me today. And she asked permission. She said, can I create an accountability group to be able to help everybody get where they need to go? And by the way, one thing I love and have a lot of respect for, she's reaching up to people that are above her. We talked last week about how you never want to be at the head of your class. Once you get to the head, you always want to find another group, right, where you can be at the bottom again. So she, and by the way, this is outside of her comfort zone for sure. She's like me, that she doesn't really like to reach out to people unnecessarily, or, would, given the option to go be social or be alone, would usually pick being alone. We are together in that. But she's been making a deliberate effort to reach out to people. So she's reaching out to Shelby Wildgust, who was a top branch manager 2 separate years in a row. And currently she's running a podcast aimed at empowering women entrepreneurs, and also working in a consultancy role directly out of the CEO's office to help equip our branch managers for high production success. She's also reaching out to Everett Burns, who was the #1 branch manager in the entire company last year, and other people as well. I know she's reaching out to the 2 of them. and that's definitely outside her comfort zone and stretching her for sure. But she's finding people to reach out to that are above her. And she's also offering, hey, I've got some value that I can add to the people that are newer, right? That she can be the head of the class here. And she wants to give value to you guys. So I'll let her cover the details on that. Kayla, you can obviously do that. Pause my video and do it now, or you can do it at the end. I leave that up to you. But I would recommend all of our branch managers and district managers should 100% participate in that. And for our assistant managers, I'm not going to make it mandatory because, you know, the honest truth is some of you guys came in with the expectation of, hey, it's 90 minutes or so a week. I have a homework assignment or two, and not a huge time commitment. And I want to make sure that I honor that. But for those of you that are able and willing to do the extra to be a top performer, you know, this is definitely an area that could help you. So excuse me, for the assistant manager candidates, I leave that to you guys. I do want to remind you, though, that for all candidates, whether you're a branch manager, district manager, assistant manager, doesn't matter, the first deadline is to have 500 friends by March 1st. That is added to your list, that they've accepted your request, and you've added them into a special list specifically for Facebook Jumpstart. So 500 friends is what we're looking for by March 1st. So make sure you get that done. And just a reminder, for right now, every single one of you guys should be starting with your own high school, the class of 2018 and 2019. And as we progress, and some of you guys will friend literally 100% of both classes, then we'll start having different ones of you target different schools. And I've already got a list prepared for when we get there. But that's all I've got on the Facebook Jumpstart workshop, or program rather. I do want to remind you that not only will this count for your pay, not only will this count for your resume experience and your skill for social media, but also will help you win the excuse me, the trip. All right, so that said, sorry for my coughing fit. That said, what I'd like to do is switch gears and get into the interview with you. And if you recall, this is a topic we were going to cover last week, and then I had new information on the PR program and on the Team Builder program. So last week we made the adjustment. So let's get into the interview now. I'm going to cover a couple of concepts with you that I really want you guys to take a lot of notes. I would encourage you to have scribbling pens. Kayla, if I go too quick, please feel free to pause the video and restart it as needed to make sure everyone gets the information. If you are watching the recording of this, then make sure that you feel free to pause the video, rewind, get the information that you missed. I want to make sure that you guys get this stuff, but my objective here is to rapid fire cover some of the concepts that you're going to need. And then at the end, make sure there's plenty of time left that you guys can split into groups and either role play it with each other, or if you're watching the recording, to role play it in your room. Okay, but the first thing I want you to understand is that the interview is not just reading the script. It's not as simple, may not be the right word, but it's not just, oh yeah, I'm going to get up in front of the room, read the script, everybody gets the job, they all love it, they all love me, I'm amazing. This isn't that, you know? This is kind of like being a sales rep. We all have the same script, but different sales reps sell more or less than different sales reps. And the reason is because the script is amazing. It's the perfect script, but you have a role to play as a human as well. Okay, so there's a couple of things that go into this. Number one is very simply preparation. John Maxwell says that preparation relieves anxiety. When you're running an interview, you want to show up and be in the office and ready 30 minutes early. That doesn't necessarily mean walking in the room 30 minutes early, but making sure that if you have a 1 o'clock interview, that at 12:30 you're in the office is set up, and if an applicant walks in at 12:30, you could greet them and be prepared for them versus trying to change out of your sneakers or get the door open, right? You want to make sure the room is prepared. You want to make sure it's clean, which means the floor is vacuumed, the chairs are neat, there's not a lot of clutter laying around. There's clipboards and pens on the desk ready to go. By the way, pro tip, I always look at how many people are scheduled for the interview in Vector Live, and I set up enough chairs and enough clipboards for 30% of them. Okay, so about a third. The reason for that, actually, of all the places to learn this, I learned it from my pastor. I used to have chairs lined up around the entire office so that 20, 25, 30 people could come in and find a seat. And I showed a picture of the office to my pastor, and he said, you know, if you have that many chairs show up or laid out and 10 people come in, but there's 30 open chairs, it looks like 20 people didn't show up. Even if 10 was the number you were expecting, the perception is that you were expecting 30 and they don't know, right? He said, if it's better if you have 10 people show up, but there's only 5 chairs. So you're constantly pulling out new chairs like, oh man, it's busy. There's a lot of people. There's more than we were ready for. And you're prepared for it, but it gives the perception that things are busier than they actually are. So it has nothing to do with how many actually show up, everything to do with the perception. So I always make sure to set out enough chairs for 30%. And my hope is that I'm putting out extra chairs as more people come in. So that's it on the chairs. You want to make sure that there's appropriate music playing. In my office, we have an Amazon Alexa or an Amazon Echo, whatever it is, and I have an office playlist. So in my office, you just come in and say, Alexa, play the office playlist. Or, you know, sometimes the staff gets bored, so they say, Alexa, play the office playlist on shuffle, whatever. Alexa, pause. Nice. She was playing my favorite song, though. I'm kind of tempted to just pause this and listen to it. Do it later. And you want to make sure you want to check the desk, meaning on the left-hand drawer of the desk is where you keep all of your cutting stuff. So in there, you're going to want to have plenty of leather, extra pennies, and your scissors and your knives for the leather test, the bad one and the good one. So that's on the left side. On the right-hand side, you have the interview quizzes. It's a piece of paper that you give them as they watch the video. And you want to make sure there's enough of those. But you always want to make sure. The worst, one time there was someone had borrowed the scissors from the desk. They used them, and they didn't put them back. And then I ran an interview, and I didn't notice that they were missing until I needed them. And that definitely does fall to a degree on the person who took them and didn't put them back. But it also does fall on me that I didn't check. That would have been a very easy thing to avoid. So just want to make sure it's ready to go. A good tip is walk into the office and look at it as if it was your first time walking in. So I look around not as the owner, you know, not as a person who works here and I'm used to it, but it's like, if this was my first time seeing the office, what would my impression be? You know, and you want to make sure that's a good impression. Next thing is very simply being what's called a duck on water. Okay, duck on water. The concept behind this is, if you ever see a duck floating on a pond, you know, they're sitting there just bobbing, very gentle, very relaxed. They're kind of chilling. But if you look at their legs under the water, they are freaking out. Their feet are all over the place. What that means for you is that it's okay for you to be freaking out inside. But outside, the perception that you give has to be everything is normal. Everything is expected, you know, and we've had weird stuff happen in interviews. One time I was running an interview and a poster just fell off the wall and it went crashing, you know, and the key, what happened. How I respond is what I can control. What I don't want to do is start freaking out like, oh my God, did it break? Is it okay? Hang on for, you know, I just want to be like, oh, all right, we'll get that later. Anyway. And then right back in the script. You know, I've had it before when I'm running an interview and somebody decided it wasn't for them and they got up and walked out. You know, what do you do? Like, oh my God, like, is everything okay? Freaking out. Let me stop what I'm doing. It's like, cool. You know, what I do now is I just let them leave and I don't say another word until the door is closed behind them. And then I look at my applicants. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry that person was so rude. Anyway, and I keep going. You know, but the key is that no matter what happens, I've had it before where a parent came in and they were salty about a rep sample kit or something. And, you know, it can be stressful for sure. My little feet were freaking out under the water. But the perception that you have to give is, I'm in control. Everything is fine. Nothing's a big deal. You know, hey, we'll take care of that later. I'm in a meeting, but, you know, whatever you got to do. But either way, the duck on water really matters. When crazy stuff happens, people are looking at the leader and they're not looking for you to have all the answers necessarily, but they are looking for how your character is going to reveal itself. And if you're the kind of person that's stressed and anxious and not confident, or are you the person who's calm and cool and collected and the person that they should follow? And how you respond demeanor is more important than what you say or what you do, if that makes sense, right? Another big one is you want to have a ritual. Okay, the worst possible way to go into an interview is that you're on your phone, you're texting your friends, you're catching up on Snapchat, you're looking at people texting you that they're not going to make it or they're going to be late or whatever. You've got someone distracting you in the office, asking you questions or taking you out of your zone, and then going in and trying to be the recruiter. You guys already know that recruiting is the number one skill or area that drives the business, and you can't do the most important part of the day not on your game. Can you imagine an athlete going into a big decisive game like, oh yeah, I'm going to chat with my friends on Snapchat, send a couple text messages, one of my teammates said he's running late, another one said he forgot his water, another one said he forgot his cleats, and then go out and execute? No, right? What are athletes doing? Their phones are away. They're in the locker room. They're talking to the coach. They're getting hyped. They're doing warm-ups and stretches. But that's how you get in the game. You got to do the exact same thing for your interviews. What does that look like? Number one is doing a power pose. Okay, there's an entire TED Talk on this. I'm not going to go into it in detail now. But the bottom line is research has been proven that when you stand or sit in a powerful position, meaning very primal, you want to make yourself big, like arms up above, like out, right? They say that putting your legs up on the desk, I don't recommend that, by the way, not my desk, but other desks, putting your legs up, or just standing with your hands on your hips or right, shoulders back, whatever it is, but putting yourself in a powerful position changes the chemistry in your body. Okay, I forget the name of the chemicals. This isn't my forte, but cortisol, I think, is the bad one. I think that's the stress one. May not be testosterone, might be. Either way, there's a different chemical that's like power and confidence and whatever. But either way, standing in a power pose for about 2 minutes lowers the stress chemical and increases the confidence chemical in your brain. It's also been proven that making yourself small, like hunching over, looking at a cell phone, leaning in your computer, these positions that we're so used to in an office kind of job, they actually do the opposite. They raise the stress hormones and they lower the confidence hormones, and they put you in a place where your brain isn't feeling powerful. They've literally tested people just from having them stand in either a dominant pose or a submissive pose, and then go through a mock interview. And the people that stood in the powerful poses performed better because of the chemical balance in their body. So you want to make sure that you are power posing, right? Your phone should be away. There comes a point when I'm texting with people trying to get them in, but at least 15 minutes before I'm ready to get started, my phone's away, and anybody that texts me, I'll find out about it after the interview's over, but not during. You got to make sure you're telling yourself a story. Like, hey, I'm a recruiter. My job is to recruit these people. I'm going to get them, right? Not that they're going to just come in and want it, but I'm going to get them. Especially the best people. The best people are going to want to work with me. They could work anywhere. The sharpest people have options where they could get internships and other jobs and all the things. But I have a job and they don't right now. That's why they're here. And my job is the best job. And they have a chance where they might get the job. Right? But telling yourself a story where you're getting yourself hyped up. But you should really go into an interview, not just, oh yeah, it's another part of my day, it's a thing I have to do, but really pumped, just like an athlete taking the field at the start of a game. I'm going to go through the next couple things in order. I'm going to talk about your demeanor as you're actually speaking with people, connecting with the applicants, what to do during the video and what to do after the video. So let's bang this out together. Your demeanor as people are coming in the office, you should be smiling, you should be friendly, you should be welcoming. You should not be their friend, and you're not even on their level. The mindset is, hey, I'm glad you're here, right? I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the office, but we don't need you, right? We want you. We want good people. You might be a good people. We don't need you. And there's not a single person, no matter how sharp they are, no matter how impressive they are, that you need them or your business is going to fail. But I've seen managers, especially when they're new, someone comes in like, oh, you're here. Oh my God, welcome. It's so nice to see you. And they give this impression like nobody comes in for interviews. which just isn't the case. Our target in our office this summer is 500 launched sales reps, which means about 2,000, 2,200 people coming in this year. But I see new managers who just get so excited that they give the wrong impression. So when I have people come in, what I always do is I hold my hand out. I'm like, oh, you're here for an interview? Great. Hands out. And I usually take one step toward them, one step. And then I let them come the rest of the way to me. You guys tracking with me? All right. So they walk to me. And then I shake their hand like, hey, did you find the place okay? Good. I'm glad you made it. And I get them set up with an application, right? When you do the product demonstration, so at the very beginning of the group portion of the interview, we cut a penny and we cut the leather. Now, this is important, by the way. You got to wear the right hat. You know, when you're a sales rep and you're on a demo, you got to be super excited. Like, check it out. It's amazing. Best thing ever. Because you're selling the product. In the interview, it's the opposite. In the interview, you're not selling the product. You're selling the job. And the easiest way to not do that is to be super salesy when you show the product. Because if you're super salesy and excited, you know, the applicants in the interview are looking like, man, I don't have that personality. I'm not like that. I don't know if I can do this job. So the salesier you are in the interview, they'll actually weed themselves out of the job. So the best way to do it is just be like, yep, yeah, you know, they cut a penny in half. That's what they do. It's normal. It's what we do. Yep, it's good. You know, and you're just very matter of fact about the product so that they can see like, man, I can connect with that. I could definitely just show that. By the way, all the words I'm saying are just for context or an example. I'm not obviously saying those words, right? You do want to make sure to connect with the applicants. Never be impressed with them. You know, I've seen people, actually, it's really funny. If you ask Landon, you know, you guys know Landon's story at this point. He was a D1 football player, state champion football player, going on a scholarship, training for the NFL. And when he was telling me all that stuff in his interview, I was like, oh, that's cool. What position do you play? And he was so mad about it. So mad. He was like, I was like, I don't understand. Like, usually when I do an interview, that's all they want to talk about. People are excited about it. He's like, I didn't understand why you weren't excited. And then at the end of the interview, I used that as part of the reason I gave him the job. And he was like, damn straight. You know, I had one guy who actually became a district manager. He was so funny that he thought in the interview that we didn't even like him. He thought he wasn't going to get the job because nothing that he said impressed us. Right. So it doesn't matter what school they go to. I've even got a girl on my receptionist team who very intelligent, 4.7 weighted GPA in high school, applying for Yale and Harvard, just got a $50,000 academic scholarship to Roanoke College. And when she was in the interview, I'm like, yeah, you know, you're obviously intelligent. I can see that. You know, now obviously she's on my team and we're celebrating all the cool stuff that she's doing. But in the interview, you know, it's really more like, oh, you're going to Yale. Cool. Tell me about that. You know, why'd you pick Yale? Yeah, great. You know, just as an example. But you don't want to be impressed. And the reason for that is you want to make them feel like they have to earn it. People, if they feel like they just got it as a gimme, they're not impressed and they're going to find something else that they feel is going to be more challenging. So by making them feel like they have to earn it and work hard to impress you and not succeed, that's how you be a good recruiter, right? To go with that, you want to give pushaways, not like, oh yeah, so like when you work here, you come in twice a week for a meeting, or yeah, you know, you're going to get a training manual in training, or yeah, like, you know, when you call your mom. No. It's more along the lines of, hey, if you were to get the job, you know, if you were to work with us, you know, if you are selected. You know, I love when people are like, yeah, so when's my training? And I'm like, oh, let's see if you get the job first. If you do, we'll definitely cover that. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, right? It's amazing. But you want to make sure you give them pushaways. Never let them assume that they got it, right? To go with that too, you do have to know their names. You know, and not everybody, it is a skill. It's not like, oh, I'm really good at names. I'm really not good at names. I confess, I've had times, even yesterday, recently, there's a woman that I've talked to a couple of times over the last 3 years. I've not talked to her for quite a while, and I saw her yesterday and I called her the wrong name, you know, and she's like, it's Heather. And I was like, oh, I'm a jerk, right? My fault for not caring enough or being invested enough to remember her name. Uh, on the other hand, I've had it where my biggest group ever, I had 57 people in my office at excuse me, at one time, and I knew every single one of their names. I recited their names to them at the beginning of the interview, in the middle of the interview, and at the end of the interview. And it's not that I was better then than I am now. It was just that I was much more focused on it. So you can get to know their names by giving yourself something to remember them by. Like, oh, Beth was wearing the maroon shirt, Kayla's wearing the blue, Landon needs a haircut, whatever the case may be. He got one today, by the way, finally. But whatever it takes, make the extra effort to actually know them. The worst is when I've seen managers at the end, they go to give someone a job and they have to look at the person's resume to know their name before they offer them a position. Oh, that's not recruiting, right? And then especially as you get to know people on the team and you know who we're working with, name dropping is a big one. Like, oh, you go to Arundel High School. Do you know Kevin Garcia? Oh, do you go to Broadneck? Do you know Bryce Zemer or Landon Rieker or Jordan Wetzel? Yeah, just other students from Broadneck that have done really well with us, right? That does come with experience and getting to know people on the team, but that is a really helpful one. That's all I've got to say about demeanor and connecting. Let's talk about during the video. When the video's playing, you have to realize, and I know we've talked about this, but you guys are so lucky that we even have the video. You know, it used to be that we had to memorize a 32-page document for the interview and also memorize a corresponding 16-page document of what to write on the whiteboard, what to erase and when to erase and all that nonsense. And now it's literally one page before the video, play a video, page and a half after the video, done. So easy. But during the video, I've seen managers get tempted to like talk to each other and hang out. And they're like, oh, I'm going to catch up on my phone. No. During the video, you got to stay in the room, right? If they see you leave the room, you lost them all immediately. So you got to stay in the room with them. You have to watch them to see their engagement. And I've seen people watch the video and they have multiple choice questions to answer and they're not even answering them. And this is a concept for another time, but I've excused them. Like, hey, if you're not going to participate, don't even bother staying until the end of the interview. Talk about how to do that another time. That's not today, but I've done that. You know, at the same time, when I see the people that are really engaged and they're taking notes and, you know, answering the questions and all that stuff, I sometimes use that as part of the reason to accept them. Like, hey, I noticed your engagement during the video. I do text my no-shows at that point. And like I said, I'm not following up on text with my friends. I'm not popping on social media real quick. You have to be disciplined with that. But I do text my no-shows. I've got a scripted text I'll give you, but I do try to reschedule anybody who responds. And I also look over their application. And when I'm looking at the application, I'm looking for reasons to accept them, GPAs, other jobs, schools, things like that. At the end of the interview, you're going to bring them back and give them a chance to ask questions. And I mention that now because I found that sometimes during the video or sometimes after the video ends, people start like, hey, can we ask questions now? And what I always do there is I say, we'll get them. All right, when I bring you back at the end, we'll answer all your questions. So that's everything I've got for during the video. Let's talk about after the video is over, right? You read the end portion and you get them spread around the room. You get them working on their sheet to answer their questions. And you start bringing people back one by one to tell them if they got the job or not. Excuse me. Now, there's not a right way or a wrong way necessarily to do this, but if I have a large group, what I typically like to do is get my least favorite people first, the ones that I would give the job to, don't get me wrong, but they weren't the ones that I was like, man, this is a person we gotta get, you know? And I try to get them first because I can typically meet them very quickly. And it sets the pace. You know, if people see me come back and I'm having a 10-minute conversation with one of my best people, and they're like, oh man, there's 10 of us here. It takes 10 minutes per person. I'm never going home. Maybe I'll just go home now, right? Versus like, oh, it only takes a minute or two. Cool. You know, and then I get my longer conversations with my best people. So I usually get my lower end of the spectrum first. Also people that I don't necessarily care if I get referrals from them or not, right? Then I wait until my best people are finished with the referrals, and ideally they're writing down 5, 10, 15 people to recommend for the job. When they're finished, then I get them, and I make sure to go slow. And sometimes your sharper people do take a little bit longer, A, because you're connecting with them, B, they might have more questions, things like that. And then at the end, once I get my best people, then I go as quickly as possible without rushing, obviously, at the end. So that's kind of the general order. I do give them a chance to ask questions there. And I'll tell you, the questions are one of the ones where you really just have to watch me run interviews or watch someone experienced run interviews, because I don't have scripted answers for every question, because it really does depend on the interview and the individual, what questions they have. I will tell you, I prefer it when they have questions at the end of the interview, because the video that we cover is very good. The information in the script is very good. But when they have questions, it shows me they were paying attention, they want clarification or further information, so they're good. But I don't have them scripted because it really can vary based on the person. The key concept is simply to make sure they feel comfortable and they have the answer that they need to feel comfortable and confident accepting the job, without going into so much detail that you're running training at the end of the interview, right? Knowing that everything's going to be covered in training anyway, so we don't have to explain everything in so much detail that they could go out and execute it, but rather we want to give them enough detail that they're confident and comfortable showing up to the training, getting to the next step in the process. For example, the pay. People ask me a lot of times, how does the pay work? Or can I give more detail on the pay? And I'm not trying to go into a full-blown explanation of how does base pay, how does commission, how are they calculated, how do you turn in a manager sign-off form, blah, blah, blah. No. All I'll do is say, yeah, it works out so that you get paid $18.50 for every single appointment, no matter what. There's no quota, there's no requirement for that. $18.50 guaranteed. Now, if our students, by the way, notice I'm not saying now if you, I'm saying, yeah, now if our students make sales, they have a chance to get commission. The commission can actually be more than the $18.50, but they can't make less. The bottom line is they always get whichever one is bigger, and we pay every week. And that's enough. That's enough for them. Like, all right, I get how it works, and I'll cover more detail than that in the training. Let me wrap up with this. When you give them the job, you always want to give a push away first. Something even as simple as, hey, we have a lot of people applying, and obviously I can't work with everybody, or, this is my second interview today. Obviously I can't work with everybody. That's a push away. Then you give one or two sincere reasons why they stood out. And I've seen new managers especially where they're like overly flattering. They're like, yeah, you did a great job. You came early, you dressed professionally, you brought a resume, you're really attentive in the interview, you go to a good school, you've got a good GPA, you play, you're captain of the cheerleading squad. And they're giving all of these reasons to accept someone, and it's overkill, right? Then it gets to just be flattery, So it's like, hey, I really like that you came in professionally, and I can tell that you've got leadership skills because you're the captain of the cheer squad. I think you could do well here, and I'd like to work with you. Right? So it's sincere, it's genuine, but it's not overload, right? When you offer them the job, always shake their hand. I would even practice that. It's just like, hey, so you got the job today. Congratulations. And I reach out as soon as I say that. And then when you schedule them for training, it's all scripted out for you verbatim. But the key for that is making sure they show up to training with a list. Okay, it's the worst. The worst is when they show up to training, but they don't have anyone to call. And it's like, I send them home, by the way. I send them home because I'm like, I can't even train you if you don't have the ability to do appointments. The second worst is when they show up to training with 10 names and numbers on their list, because that's the minimum, right? And that is in the manager's control. I'll tell you, when I first started doing this, we didn't always have reps come into training with names and numbers. Also, training used to be 3 days instead of 2 and 21 hours instead of 10. A little different, right? And part of that time was spent building up their list. When we first started, we had every rep coming in with 10, and we tweaked and tweaked and tweaked and adjusted the script until we got it right. It's in the script now. It's just verbatim the way it is. But one of the key concepts is very simply, hey, when you come in, make sure you get at least to 10. 10's enough to get the ball rolling, but don't just get to 10 and quit. Most people do more like 20 to 30. If you can, fill up the page, but don't call them yet. We'll teach you how to do that in training, right? Something as simple as saying, don't get to 10 and quit. Most people do 20 to 30, right? So it's already in the script. I just want you to understand that is a critical part of it. That said, I hope that your guys' pens were scribbling furiously. If you need to, maybe you already paused it and rewatched or whatever, but if you need to, make sure you get this stuff down, because it's all little stuff that turns you from an interviewer to a recruiter. What I would like to do now is have you guys role play it. And if you're at home watching the recording, you want to get a chance to do the entire interview script from start to finish twice, right? Twice. If you want to take it to another level, record yourself for one of them and send it to me, and I'll get an eye on it, and we'll celebrate the things you're doing well and give you a couple areas to work on. For right now, for the live people, I'm going to turn it over to Kayla. And Kayla, if you can divvy up who's practicing what sections, who's practicing with who, I would be grateful. For all of you guys, I appreciate you. I come back on Tuesday evening. I don't have any scheduled one-on-one calls for the rest of this week, but if you need or want a one-on-one call, feel free to text me 2 to 3 times that would work for you, and I'll be happy to coordinate that with you. Aside from that, have fun practicing the interview, and I will see you guys next Tuesday. See you.